Okay, so this is my 1911 45. It is probably one of the coolest things I own. And in this video, I'm going to tell you everything you should know before you buy one. Things you need to know, and never buy one before you know this. But I'm going to talk about it. Nobody has gone down the rabbit hole about these as probably as much as I have. And there's a lot you need to know about them. So let's get to it. I'm going to tell you what I've learned. So I have been a Glock guy for a very long time. I bought this thing probably 15 years ago when I was in the Army. I was at in Richmond, Virginia at a gun show. And they had these, and I was a young lieutenant, and I was about to go to Iraq, and so I wanted to do a lot of training with my pistol, and I picked this one up, and I just shot it and shot it and shot it, and I've always been a fan of the Glock 19. This is just a great pistol. It does everything you could probably really ever want it to, but it is ugly. It is ugly, and I do not care. This thing is absolutely beautiful. Okay, and it's got its quirks, I will say that. I'll say that there's probably 7 things I really got to categorize with this thing. And by the end of this video, I'm going to tell you which one I'd go to battle with if I had to pick one to go to war with again. Alright, I've already been there once, and there's things you learn while you're there. The first thing I will say about this one is it's heavy. So if you're looking to buy one and you've been on the fence and you've had a Glock 19 or you've had a striker fire pistol or you've had something that you have used that is not steel, good old American steel, the first thing you need to know about it, these things are heavy. And unless you're in an open carry state, this one's not going around with you. If you watched my last video, I really talked about this being something that's a truck gun. It's something you're probably going to leave in the truck. It is big and it's really hard to hide underneath your shirt, especially here in Florida where it's 100 degrees most of the time. So carrying this would be one of those things that would be tough. But if you're able to carry it in some type of backpack or on your chest or your waist or, you know, under your shirt and you're in Texas or someplace where you can openly display it, this might be something for you. So just keep that in mind. If you ever had to pistol whip something with it, that would be your pistol. This would not. This feels like a little piece of plastic, but it will go bang every time, and the barrel is just long enough for it to do some damage and hit what you want to shoot. Okay, so the next one I'll talk about is expense. This is a Metro Arms 1911 45 ACP. This one was actually given to me as a gift. It was probably one of the best gifts I ever had. I actually had my YouTube channel engraved on it and the charging forward flag because, yes, I was in the Army once upon a time. So you might be thinking, cheap one versus expensive one. What you're really paying for, the tooling, some of the cheaper 1911s, when you break them down, you'll see some tooling errors in them, and you'll see the finishing work might not be about as good. You're fighting over forged versus cast. There's many cheaper manufacturers out there, especially from Turkey, that are doing forged slides and forged frames, and they're doing pretty good. But you'll basically see that a lot of the finishing work is not as good as your Dan Wessons or your really expensive 1911s. That's one thing I noticed about this one. This Metro looks beautiful. I mean, it is a very nice 1911. And I have broken this thing down 9 ways from Sunday, and I have yet to really see a tooling error on it. It has one minor one right there. And, you know, I don't know if it was when they did this, but I mean, it is so small. And honestly, this is going to go in the woods with me. It's going to go in the truck with me. It's going to get skin up. Odds are I'm going to mess something up on the frame just from the holster, okay? So it is not something I'm going to worry about. It is going to go boom, and I'm going to use it and abuse it. I am not worried about it. So for me, the finishing work is not really that big of a deal. I would rather have a nice 1911, $500-$700, and rock and roll, spend the rest of the money on ammo and magazines and range time and get proficient with it. Because this one versus this one takes a little learning curve. This one's a grip it and rip it, okay? It's not pretty at all. You're not gonna sit around and lube this thing. You're gonna sit around and polish this one. This one's really cool, okay? Really the big difference. I have no problem shooting ball ammo in the 45. 230 grains, plenty good, okay? I can't believe the brain power that is spent arguing over ammunition, especially hollow points, ball ammo, and a 45. If you're shooting bears, do it. But the ball 45 ACP has put down plenty of things. And unless you're shooting grizzly bears, let's argue about something else, okay? Just get proficient, center mass, pull the trigger until it's over, and that's all you gotta do. It's not complicated stuff. Because this thing shoots 230 grains of freedom. And worked for a long time in 2 world wars. Let's move on to the next question. About ammo. I'll tell you this, half of the stuff out there about ammunition is selling ammunition. Every time they come out with a new caliber that you're just like, do we need another one? Like 6.5 Creedmoor. Like half this ammunition is literally marketing. I hope people understand that. It's just marketing to sell another type of ammunition. Half this stuff's been around for a long time, has worked for a very long time. 38 Special, been around for a long time, still works. 45 ACP, still works. 9mm, still works. Like, the list goes on and on and on, and now we're talking about 10mm? To kill something on 2 legs with thin skin? Like, what are we talking about, y'all? When you're looking at buying these, you will realize very fast that good old 1911s are expensive. You can get $1,000 in one of these things really fast. What you're really paying for is all the beautiful engravings and all the intricate metalwork. But this one was made out of the Philippines. It's made by a company called Metro Arms, kind of like Rock Island. And man, this thing is awesome. I've been 500 rounds through it, and it is rocking and rolling. It is yet to let me down. It fits tight, but not too tight that it wants to hang up on everything. I've only shot ball ammo with it. If you watch my video about, you know, when I did my review on it, and that's all I really need to shoot in it, because they all fall to the 45 ball, and that's really all I got to say with that. You can use your fancy ammo all you want, but 230 grains to the dome, 230 grains will sink a hole in your chest, and if that doesn't work, that's what control pairs are for. And that's one thing about these right here. You can go down that rabbit hole of expense very fast. This one was probably $500-600. Had some engraving put on there, probably $800 out the door. But would I take this over a Glock? Well, the Glock was $400. Came with 3 mags, and I was able to, the difference of the $500, I can go to the range and shoot a lot and get proficient with the weapon I need to use, okay? So if you're looking at buying one and you're not proficient with a pistol right off the bat, then this might not be for you. But if you've been into pistols for a very long time, or you like shooting revolvers and you just looking for something that is cool for the collection, well, this one is cool. I picked this one up and play with it way more than the Glock, okay? I am not going to sit around and just lube this thing and polish it and caress it. It is not that kind of pistol. This one, I can sit around and lube up all I want. I mean, one thing about this is you got to keep it wet. And when you keep it wet, like, it will fire. You've got to keep it lubed, like so much lube that it's going to spit in your face when you fire. Remember, like, basic training when drill sergeants make you put so much doggone CLP on your rifle that when you shot it, it spewed up in your eyes? And to this day, I can still remember the CLP in my eyes, okay? That's this one. But it will fire, and it will fire right. And I am way more accurate with this one than I have ever been with this one. This one I get 16 rounds and I need them. This one I've got 8 with the extended mag, and I can hit what I'm shooting at. And I know one shot from this one's going to put you down or put you hurting, son. And it's going to take a couple from this one. That's why they got 2 in the chest, 1 in the face. I will say the 45 is a great cartridge. The 9mm is a great cartridge. 45 is just heavy. It's slow. I don't really care how fast it gets down there, as long as it does its job. But these are the trade-offs of it. Light and fast, big and slow. You just have to pick and choose. I'm going to let y'all be the boss on this. Comment down below with which one you would rather use. I don't really have a preference. I'll use either one of them, and I feel proficient with either one of them. I just think the Lord's cartridge is really freaking cool. One thing I will say about buying a 1911, it's all about the magazines. Some of these 1911s, especially the ones from the Philippines, Turkey, etc., the magazines are like, eh. The magazine that came with mine, Metgar, it's great. It's worked fine. I have no complaints about it. Only came with one, so I needed to buy a couple other. I went and got a Wilson Combat for 35 bucks. Get them in Academy, get them in a local sports shop. It's been great. Works great. I would buy a couple of them. I would buy probably 3, just because everybody needs 3. I don't know why, I just came up with that. But definitely get good mags. Invest in good magazines. I remember in the Army, my M4, the times it messed up was literally the magazines. You get these magazines that are mistreated, the armor stuffing too many rounds in them, or you got soldiers just ramming rounds in them, and they wind up getting bent. And they usually wind up getting bent right here where they feed in. So just magazines, 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 good springs. Take care of them, clean them. Don't let sand get in the rounds, and you'll be fine, okay? I would probably say 90% of most misfeeds is the magazine and the user not keeping it clean. If you're new to 1911s, you will realize real fast when you join the forums that people love to accessorize these things. Parts are interchangeable. They love to change out the grips. They love to change out the internals, the springs. Half of it doesn't even have to be done. And I don't know how many people have made fun of the grips on mine. I happen to like them. People say they just don't like them. I'm like, you know what? They're good enough for me. I can hold on to it and it goes boom. And that's all I really care about. And if you're into pretty things, well, you can get all kinds of different grips for this thing to make it look however you want. If you want ivory, they got ivory. If you want to do plastic, they got plastic. If you want to do wood, they got wood. And that's really like what I would say about 9mm versus 45. The 9mm, the whole point of having more rounds is you can put some control fire on the enemy, okay? And you can create distance with 16 rounds, okay? And you can put down suppressive fire. I mean, the 9mm will do its job. It will put something down, okay? But it might take 2 or 3, and that's what it was designed for. It's not a one-hitter quitter. You're not going to shoot it once and it's just going to flail to the ground and stop moving. I mean, it might, if you put it in the right place. But 45 will steal your soul, okay? And I don't care what most of those skewed documents on the internet are. Ball-to-ball ammo, 9mm ball, 45 balls winning every time. I don't care what you got to say. I don't care about your funny numbers. It's like a heavy fastball, okay? And it breaks bats. The 9mm is just lighter. It goes really fast, but it makes holes. They'll both do the job. But you can't have $40 hollow point ammunition that's specially made today's standards in a 9mm and then compare that to 45 ball. Like, what are we talking about? I talked about that on my other video. Just go check it out. Also, you got to think about with the 45 is it's slender. It's very slender. It will fit right close to your body versus having a double stack magazine on the Glock 19. It is a little thicker. I will say I can hide my Glock 19 way better underneath my clothes or whatever than I can for the size of the 1911, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so here's the real thing I will say that I learned about this. There is a tad learning curve with these. Going from a polymer pistol, a striker fire, Glock 19 to this, there is a learning curve. I don't care what anybody has to say. Right off the bat, being able to get used to it being locked and cocked, just like this, there's just something psychological about this right here. Even though you know it's locked, even though you have another safety and then you have the trigger itself, walking around, 90% of your friends are going to be like, why is the hammer back? Okay? Whether you call it locked and cocked or cocked and locked, that was crazy in the comments. People argue about that. Who cares? You know it's locked and cocked. All right? But this takes a little bit of getting used to. I remember before I had ever really seen too many 1911s, I was in Virginia and I saw somebody walk by with one in their holster and I was like, man, his hammer's back. And I remember back to that day that this is something people have to get used to. And even though I know this thing, it's not going to go down because we have it locked and cocked, there's just something about it. And I'll say this, there's been many studies to where you put this on the table right next to a revolver or a Glock 19 or a Glock, and you put 2 laymen right next to it and say, pick it up and fire it, it will take them a minute to figure this out. Now, you can look at that as a good thing or a bad thing if you're looking at a self-defense situation. Let's say your wife has to pick this up and she's never used one of these. It's going to take her a minute to figure this out, if she can figure it out. I'm not saying anything bad, I'm just saying it is what it is. And then make sure her hand is seated perfectly right there on that beaver tail. And then get it seated and her hands being able to hold this thing tight enough for it to actual cycle and not limp wrist it. I've tried to limp wrist this one and it did not have a problem firing. I tried everything in the world. I even had to let my mom fire it, and she's not very big. It fired just fine. But you can take that into your math that you could limp wrist it and it might not cycle. But I'll say this, if you do practice with this thing, you can get used to it. This right here takes a little getting used to. Remember, if you ever shot your M4, M16 for the old guys, okay? And you would go up, safety off, go down, safety on. Go up, safety off, go down, safety on, right? That's a little getting used to. This will take a little getting used to, and that's the biggest part, is the old school part of that. Also, when you're chambering, whether you think about this or not, and then now you got to flip it up. However you feel about that, does it make you a little queasy to, you got to do that without touching anything? You know, is what it is. This is a grip it and rip it, okay? You got that one little safety right there on the doggone trigger, and this is a grip it and rip it. Use it. If it's cycled, there's one in the chamber, your wife picks it up and just starts going bang, bang, bang until it empties. This one, she's got to pick it up, and she's got to do that. She's got to get it seated, and she's got to let it fire. Just something to think about. There is a tad learning curve on that pistol. Okay, so if I had to march off to save the state of Florida one last time, I would have to pick a go-to-war gun. And if I was going to pick one, well, here's the way I would analyze it. 1, I got to carry it. This bad boy's heavy. 2, ammo. How much ammo can I take with me, and how much can fit in the gun? Simplicity and being able to maintenance in the field, okay? My Glock 19 is very easy to strip. This one's kind of easy to strip. Glock 19 is a lot easier to strip. I can carry more ammo on my Glock 19. I can carry 16 rounds, extra mag 16 rounds, extra mag 16 rounds. 9mm is lighter, I can take more with me. That's why 5.56 ran the battlefield. And if it's about suppressive fire in a controlled environment, I can lay a lot of hate real fast with the Glock 19. This one, it's heavy. And if you've carried a weapon for very long in a real environment, you know weight matters. I tell you, when I first got to Iraq, I had all the Gidgets and Gazmos on my rifle. And I was a gun truck platoon leader. And I remember telling my doggone armor to take it off. Take the junk off. I didn't need half the lights and all that junk. I took it off because it was heavy and I had to carry it all day, every day. And, you know, a lot of guys wound up taking a lot of that junk off because it was heavy. You just learn how to use iron sights or just keep the bare minimum on it. This one is heavy. And if I had to go to war with it, I would not hesitate to take this to war. Like, I definitely could. I'd have no problem with it. Just like the old Texas Rangers riding around with this bad thing, I would feel confident with it. And I knew if I hit something, it's going to go down, okay? But if I was going to go to war, it would be this one. Why? Just because it's the Glock 19 and it's light and I can put a lot of fire, and I put a lot of firepower downrange on this thing and I know how to use it. That is not saying the Glock or the 1911 45 is not cool. It is a bad mammer jammer and you're going to just sit around and look at it. It is just cool, probably the coolest thing in my safe, okay? Just keep that in mind. If you're just entering and you're looking for your first pistol, I would do this, okay? Glock 19, Glock 17, whatever fits your fancy polliner. $400 out the door, $450, $500. Get you some extra mags, get you 500 rounds, go play with it, get good with it. And then your second one, get you a 1911 because they're bad mammer jammers, all right? It's just cool. Get the Colt, get whatever. I like my Metro. I like the Rock Islands. They're all just just a machining tool with a patent and a computer, and they're spitting them out just like the very first ones. And they can be finicky right off the bat. Got a little break-in period. You might have to polish the feed ramp. Okay, this one you don't have to polish the feed ramp. And it's not saying that I like one better than the other. I'm just saying this has been my experience. This one's really good. It's done its job. This one's really cool. It does its job. And yes, I have the serial numbers covered up here just because the internet does weird stuff with serial numbers. I don't know why they do it. I don't know why we can't just all get along. But I do love it. And that's really all I got to say about it. Get you one. Break it in. But I'll say this. When you do ever have to use your go-to-war weapon, it is going to be the most confusing, longest day, probably tiredest, hottest, sweaty, most irritating day that you're probably going to have to ever experience in your entire life. Your adrenaline's going to be pumping, and odds are that thing you are trying to do, you've practiced a million times and you're still fumbling it. So do not think that you're just going to be Rambo out there doing things. You're going to want something simple. And keep that in mind, that the most basic functions are going to be tough. When you hear that bump in the night and you're moving to the sound of whatever it may be, you need simplicity, you need quality of fire, you need to not think about this. You need to think about where you're going and what you're doing, and it's going to have to be something you've practiced over and over again. So if it's your first pistol, I would go with something cheaper, simple, and practice with it. And then when you get good with something simple and cheap, because you've invested in ammunition and lots of magazines, then go over to something that is cool like the 1911. But if you've already done all that, 1911's for you. It's pretty cool, I'll say that. Just something about this thing being in my hand that I feel like I can handle most situations. It feels good. I mean, nothing points. And the trigger, nothing points like a 1911, and the trigger is absolutely awesome on a 1911. The Glock 19 is like pulling a brick out of my pocket, but this one just feels good, okay? And I don't know what that means to you, but the trigger on this one is crisp and smooth, and it just looks good. So keep that in mind if you're looking for something. And if I were to run out the door and there was a bear standing there, I feel comfortable. If I'm running out the door and there is a squirrel sitting there, I feel real comfortable, okay? But I know this thing will stop most anything that comes through my bedroom door. This one, I know I'm spraying a lot of ammunition center mass. Just saying. Think about that all you want. And yes, I've taken the 9mm to a combat zone. And yes, I've had plenty of range time with it. It's a very good cartridge, but I like it. I got no problem with it. I'm just trying to do a compare analysis for you guys out there that maybe this is your first time, maybe it's not. Maybe you've been doing it for 30 years, but you did need to know some things before you buy your first one. Would I get a Colt? Yeah, I like Colts. Would I get a Ruger or a Remington? Those are cool too. This one was half price. I don't think I would pay $1,000 for one just because I just, this one's the same, it's the same gun, okay? Really, you're paying for the finishing work on these things. You're paying for the tooling. You're paying for all those fancy things that go with hand engraving and hand cutting and making sure the sharp edges are not on it. But you can get a 1911 for $500, okay? And it'll be the same gun. You might argue whether you're doing forged, slide, cast frame, or forged and forged. There's a lot of good brands out there. Go look through them. But don't go in the weeds with some of the bull crap. Like you can get parts to change the entire innards of these things. But what you'll wind up finding out is a lot of the frames and the bodies themselves are all kind of made at the same place, and they just kind of work their way around the internet. And the forged versus... Look, let me tell you something. This has got a plastic body, okay? You call it polymer or whatever the heck you want to call it. But it's got a steel metal frame. It's got a metal slide, okay? And nobody cares about cast frame. And everybody will sit around and argue about cast frame, okay? I think the Metro Arms has a forged slide, forged barrel. Cool. Does it. I'm not shooting at 10,000 rounds. All right. I'm going to shoot a few hundred rounds in its lifetime. It's going to sit in the safe until I got to kill a turtle or something. You know, like, I'm just saying, like, we go way too overboard. These are better pistols than any warfighter had previously. And we're sit here and argue about it. But that's all I got to say about this. I'll see you guys in the next video. Comment down below what you think, what you figured out about these, and if you would recommend a 1911 to somebody, or just a polymer pistol, or just a Glock 19 or a SIG or whatever. That's all I got to say. See you later.